The aim of the project is to look at developing wild woodland products and developing supply chains for these. So we're funded by the European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development and Welsh Government. And today you're going to hear from all of the Dewis Gwyllt team, so that consists of myself, our Programmes Manager Maria Wilding at Llais y Goedwig, and I'm pleased to announce our project partners are here today, Wild Resources Limited. So you'll hear from Jenny Wong and Brian Dickinson in just a moment. So what we're going to do today is take a step back and have a look at, from a kind of global perspective, on how wild plants are harvested and used and conserved. We're then going to look at a short film that shows the findings from a European partnership project that Llais y Goedwig was involved in. And Maria's going to tell us a little bit more about Llais y Goedwig's involvement there. Then we're going to land back in Wales with a video, an instructional video on birch tapping and some information on seed collecting. I'll then talk you through all the things that we've got coming up with Dewis Gwyllt. There'll be a good list of things that you can get involved with there, and that'll be followed by a Q&A. The session will be drawn to a close with a little competition, which we'll talk you through in just a moment. And we're aiming to close for lunch around 12:40. So let's start with a short film. So this film is going to tell you how wild plants are harvested, used and protected around the world, and a little bit about the Fair Wild standard that ensures the continued use and long-term survival of wild plant species in their habitats.
Wild plants are a valuable resource for humanity, being used for millennia in medicines, cosmetics, and foods. The majority of people in developing countries still depend on wild plant harvesting for food, medicine, fiber for clothing, and building materials. In many developing countries, but even in America and Europe, wild plant collection provides valuable income for rural households. You may not know it, but many of the everyday products you buy contain ingredients from wild plants. Around 60,000 plant species are known to be used by humans for their medicinal properties alone. The vast majority are collected from the wild. Trade in medicinal plants is increasing, driven by consumer demand. However, a considerable proportion of the world's wild plants are under threat, with 1 in 5 of the world's plant species estimated to be at risk of extinction in the wild. The problems they are facing include overharvesting and habitat loss. Traditional knowledge of wild harvesting techniques is also being lost as people move away from rural areas and into cities. To address these problems, conservation and development organizations developed the Fair Wild Standard as a best practice standard for sustainable wild harvesting and equitable trade. The Fair Wild Standard requires that wild plants are collected sustainably in compliance with laws and regulations. The customary rights and traditional practices of local communities must also be respected, and the benefits of collection shared throughout the supply chain. Collectors must be paid a fair price for their work, with reliable payment conditions. Following fair trade principles, a social premium is paid by buyers of the wild plant ingredients, which is then used to benefit collectors and their communities. The Fair Wild Standard can be used in different ways by various stakeholders. It forms the basis for a third-party audited certification system and can be used by the private sector to ensure sustainable supply chains. Its principles and criteria have also proven to be invaluable for collection communities in managing their wild plant resources, for governments in developing regulations, and for international conventions. When you buy a product that has the Fair Wild certification mark on it, you know that the collectors involved in wild harvesting of the plants have received a fair compensation for their work and goods, a commitment for investment in a social premium fund to benefit their communities, and that their plants were collected sustainably. The goals of investing in these communities are to foster economic stability, preserve their culture, and provide opportunities for future generations. Together, if we take the right steps now, we can ensure a sustainable future for wild plants and the people who rely on them. A fair deal for people and wild collected plants involves us all.
So the Fair Wild Standard has provided inspiration for the Dewis Gwyllt project, and we are in contact with them. We're hoping to work closely with them. And in terms of certification of products and ensuring that they're harvested sustainably, we're also working with the Forest Stewardship Council, the FSC. But now I'm going to hand you over to our programmes manager, Maria Wilding. You're just going to talk about the European Partnership Project Startree, Llais y Goedwig. Over to you, Maria.
Thanks, Lucy. Hello, everybody. Nice to see so many people here. Just a bit of background, really, before Lucy would play another short video. So between 2012 and 2016, both Llais y Goedwig and World Resources were partners in a European research project with over 14 different regions of Europe, looking at non-timber or wild forest products. And for Llais y Goedwig, the reason for being involved looking at wild products was to see whether and how using the wider resources from our woodlands to create an income might help community woodland groups to become more sustainable without having to rely on grants. So we're just going to have a little bit of an overview of the Startree project and some of the things it found, and then I'll have a little bit of an explanation of what we did in Wales under Startree. Thanks, Lucy.
Fruit of our forests, exploring the potential of wild forest products. Startree is an ambitious EU project that shows how forests provide us with a great deal more than wood and can be used to strengthen economic activities in rural areas. Startree deals with the uses of wild products from the forest, their importance and potential. Wild forest products open up the possibility for people to earn a livelihood from forests, especially in regions where wood is not particularly profitable. Startree asked 15,000 households from 28 countries in Europe about their relationship with wild forest products. And did you know that 91.5% of households have consumed wild forest products? 82% of wild forest products consumed are purchased from a shop. 25% of households across Europe picked wild forest products in 2015. While there is clearly an appetite for wild forest products, a lot more can be done. And Startree identified some key challenges and opportunities. Managing for wild forest products. Forest management can promote better production of wild forest products, sometimes increasing the value of both wood and non-wood forest products, a win-win for the forest owner. Accessing wild forest products. In most Startree countries, people can freely collect wild forest products for personal use, but they can't normally commercialize their harvest without asking the landowner. This could be regulated, a measure that might offer several benefits. Understanding the markets. In addition to formal markets, informal markets are also important for trade in wild forest products. Improved supply chains for both could give rise to better livelihoods. Promoting partnerships and innovating. Indeed, the wild forest products market is ripe with innovation, with new products and enterprises emerging across Europe. It is vital to share experiences in order to promote rural development. Startree proposes a reawakening and updating of forest culture in Europe by rediscovering wild forest products and their potential. Do you want to enjoy the rich fruits of our forests?
The Startree project was an amazing opportunity to find out what was happening across Europe, and there are some countries in Europe where wild forest products are a key part of their economy, you know, a big economic driver. But we were concerned, well, part of the project was learning from what was happening in other countries and seeing how it was relevant to us. And we'll be hearing from Morelli later, one of the Startree project partners from Austria, on her project. But what the research undertaken as part of Startree confirmed in Wales, and indeed the UK, is that we don't have very well developed markets or supply chains for many wild woodland products, as happens in some of the European countries. So most activity in Wales is small scale, niche and local, and creates kind of part of an income rather than a complete livelihood. But what the Startree project did show was that the interest from Llais y Goedwig members and from community woodland groups in the project, and we could see the potential for it helping community woodlands to develop products and create supply chains. So that was that interest and that kind of impetus from the Startree and the findings from it that led us to the development a few years later. So it did take us a couple of years after the end of Startree before we got up and running with Dewis Gwyllt, but that was the kind of the forerunner of the Dewis Gwyllt project, Wild Choice, that we have now. So Lucy's mentioned a little bit about Dewis Gwyllt already, and we'll be hearing more about it over the course of the day.